Très bien. Alors, bienvenue à tous. Je suis Anne Guimont-Costecchi de la Chambre, vice-présidente de la Chambre de commerce Canada-Suisse, ici en Suisse. Et je souhaite la plus cordiale bienvenue à tous nos membres qui sont présents ce soir en ligne et aussi une très cordiale bienvenue aux membres et amis de la Chambre de commerce Canada-Suisse à Montréal, donc la Chambre de commerce Canada-Suisse du Québec à Montréal. Lorsque Vincent Galland, qui est président de la Chambre du Québec, et moi nous sommes rencontrés l'été dernier à Montréal pour évoquer cette série d'interviews, évidemment, nous pensions nous retrouver en présence, ensemble, autour d'un verre de vin. Alors je pense que c'est le COVID qui en a décidé autrement. Et donc, merci énormément à vous tous. Merci à Nicola Thibaudeau, notre invité, et à Karl Moore et à vous tous de s'être joints à nous en ligne. Alors, je suis moi-même à Genève. Nicola Thibaudeau, notre invité, est à son quartier général à Bienne.
Exactement.
Vincent et Karl Moore sont à Montréal et je crois que vous êtes tous dispersés entre le Québec et la Suisse. Alors, bienvenue. Je passe la parole à Vincent Galland qui va nous présenter notre invité et son intervieweur.
Très bien, merci Anne. I'll be continuing in English for the rest of the presentation. As some of you may know, the interview will be led in English. And so, again, welcome and thanks, Anne, for the introduction. It's our great pleasure to welcome both Karl and Nicola here today. And basically, we want to introduce both speakers today. We have Dr. Karl Moore, who's a University of Oxford, Stanford, Harvard, and Cambridge, and conducted multiple interviews with multiple CEOs across the years, and has specialized in some areas of research around introverts and extroverts lately. He's a professor at McGill des Hôtels Faculty of Management in Montreal here. And he's been recently nominated as one of the top 50 thinkers, the international Gala, for his progress made in the management field. And so he's considered one of the leading thinkers in that field of expertise. And on the other side, we thought it would be interesting to bring a successful Swiss CEO to discuss some issues around strategy, management, innovation, and technology. And so we've had Nicola Thibaudeau here present, who is a mechanical engineer by training, but she's now leading the Swiss company MPS Micro Precision Systems, which manufactures miniature and high precision electromechanical systems. And the idea again on this project is that both Karl and Nicola will spend some time together just interacting with each other. Please, if you have a question you'd like to ask either to Karl or Nicola on the interview, use the chat and ask your questions then, and we'll monitor the chat, and we'll try to have your question answered either during the chat, it's fine, it's quite open, but or a little bit after Karl and Nicola are done, and that's agreeable with you. So I'll step out and let Karl and Nicola introduce themselves before they start the discussion. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Vincent. He was one of my top students, and so I gave him an A, and evidently it paid off some years later in his introduction. So I'm delighted to have him and his wife here in Montreal, and he's such a strong connection between Quebec and Switzerland, one of the great countries that Quebec naturally and Canada naturally connect with. So I think Vincent more than adequately introduced me. And what I'm going to do in this format is do a CEO interview. I have a CEO radio show for about 8 years now across Canada where I interview CEOs, and I'll do that format with Nicola. So and as Vincent meant, just put up your hand if you have a question. And for those who are in Montreal, you might know the CEO of Air Canada is in trouble for not speaking French. So, but I've got my French tutor tomorrow morning from 8 to 9. My wife's francophone, and it's good to have parts of these meetings in French because it's great for my French, but apologize, my French is not quite up to repartee with Nicola, who's a native Francophone. So Nicola, what exactly does Micro Precision Systems do?
So we are really developing and manufacturing microsystem. So wherever you need high precision for OEM, for instance, I can give you some example. In the watch domain, we have developed miniature bearing, and we produce and develop all kind of new feature in the watch industry that need precision to below 5 micron, let's say. In micro precision system here in Biel, we are producing medical device, implantable medical device, like a pump head to procure morphine to the spine through a pump that is embedded in the body for 7 years. We are manufacturing the artificial heart. That's the very hot project for the moment because we are in a ramp up. And we have also a division that produce instruments for surgery. So we produce the instrument that is needed for the implant of the knee, the hip, and the shoulder.
How many employees roughly are there?
So altogether, we are 450 employees.
Okay, we'll get into, I mean, it strikes me as very Swiss, very high precision, very, very high quality, world class. It just strikes me as a very Swiss kind of company, Nicola.
It is. In fact, we are called Micro Precision System since 2003, but in fact, our former name was RMB, which was Miniature Bearing Biel, and it was founded in 1936. So it's with a long-lasting history.
We'll get to some of the things about innovation and some of the topics that as management people we want to think about. But Nicola, you grew up in Quebec, as I recall, and you were actually a student at McGill. Why did you, what were you studying at McGill, and tell us why you switched fields?
So I started in McGill in physics. I wanted to study physics because I met a physical engineer when I was skydiving when I was younger. In my younger time, I was traveling and skydiving all over the world. So from my 16 to 18 or 19 years old, I skydived. And I met a skydiver that was an engineer at the NASA, but she did physics study. So I registered to physics at McGill. And after a few months, I did the first semester. Everything was going very well, but it was really 12 students. In my year, we were 12 students. So a very quiet group. And one day I traveled to engineering and I saw the energy that was there, the party, I thought something special was going on. And, no, it's not, it's always like this. So I switched to physics engineering. I registered to physics engineering at Polytechnique School, and they made a mistake. They registered me in mechanical engineering. So I said, well, I can start, I could switch after. And finally, I fell in love with mechanical engineering and I stayed there.
So skydiving, that's quite an interesting career. I mean, we don't want to be psychologists here, but why skydiving, Nicola?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I was in my cégep, which is a college. And one day I went to the hall in the middle of the school, and there was some publicity about a skydiving center. I saw that and I told my mother I want to skydive. She said, I imitate her signature so I could skydive.
So,
because
okay,
I was
fraud
16.
at a young age, but we hope you outgrew that. So
I must say that when I was 16, I left home because I fell in love with my boyfriend, and I went to an apartment, and I was set up already at 16 years old. I had my own apartment and I was able to work and live alone.
So I'm doing some work on introverts and extroverts. So I got to ask you, and all my students would know I'm going to ask you, are you more of an introvert or extrovert, Nicola?
I think I'm an extrovert. You know what's the difference? Well, you must know if that's your topic. I mean, the introvert, they think a lot in their head before they outspoke, and the extrovert will think by speaking. We continue the thinking through the speech. I'm more of that kind.
So a good employee for you knows when you come by, you're going to talk a lot and have great ideas, but all I have to say is, that's interesting. And all you need is a bit of an audience at times.
I think in a team, you need everything. You need some introvert and you need some extroverts. It's very important. If you have only extrovert, it's really annoying after a while. And if you have only introvert, it's really difficult.
What strikes me as a CEO that's extroverted, when you talk about strategy and you want to learn from other people, you got to learn to bite your tongue, so to speak, and let them speak. Because if you come in as CEO and have an idea, everybody goes, oh, that's wonderful. That's why you're the boss. We love it. Where you don't really learn much. So I guess as a CEO, you've got to learn to be quiet and listen from time to time.
Well, I was in the space industry and now in the micromechanical industry. You cannot know everything. It's impossible. And the people I hire, they know a lot more than me on the technical aspect. And I would never say I can just give them the soil to have better ideas, but the idea doesn't at all come from myself. They come from exploiting the synergy between the people and giving them the facility to discuss and to have an open mind setup, an open mind atmosphere.
So, I mean, in some ways, the CEO is never the smartest person in the room in the sense that other people know more about the topic than the CEO does. So that you're very smart, but that's one way of looking at it. When you think about it, what is leadership? And I saw a short video of you talking about Swiss leadership. So Nicola, what is leadership today versus 20 years ago? And is Swiss leadership different than Canadian leadership?
Well, I think what I can say from my experience is in the last 20 years, leadership or management, even the ecosystem has changed a lot. We are not like in the past relying on a transfer of knowledge from one generation to the other generation. From now, leadership is more about creating the ecosystem, creating the flow that can continue to, don't stop the flow, keep it flowing and keep it feeding the flow of the knowledge and maybe taking the right decision to which path to take. In the past, it was a lot different. It was more about hierarchy and about, giving to each of the people the task and checking that the task has been done and having the task list, listing what has to be done and checking this is finished anymore. The flow of the processes and the business goes too fast. What you have to do is to have really to give all the, let's say, the sufficient let's say cream or let's say lubricant to the flow of the business, that there's no hurdle.
So it's quite a change from the past. Switzerland has traditionally been a bit more hierarchical than Canada, maybe. Do you see that, is Swiss leadership a bit different than in other countries?
Well, Swiss has an image that is maybe different than what it is really, and it was since a long time. In fact, I would say since years, the Swiss has developed the capacity to attract the talent and develop the talent within the talent and the organization, knowledge-wise. I think that was the force of the Swiss organization, the Swiss system. And why was it more like this than when I used to work? I used to work at IBM. IBM was a little bit Swiss, I would say, the way it was. But my experience from the Canadian industry compared to the Swiss industry 30 years ago was here you would give maybe more, let's say, the boundary for the technical development were further than in Canada. I give you an example. I used to work at IBM, when we would put up a process on the production line, we had to write the process. We called it that idiot proof. I mean, somebody would read what has to be done. It will be put your finger on the red button, push the red button, everything was written, and there was really strict boundary. You would arrive here in Switzerland at the same time, you would say it would be written on the process, produce the part plus or minus 5 microns. And then it's the fact that there is I guess the way that the training is done, the way that the learning is done, make that there's a more, let's say, the boundary are further because we give more responsibility to the lower level. And that's the big difference.
Okay. At the end of meetings I've gone to, there's often a to-do list. So here's what we have to do. Here's going to do it. Here's when it's due. What resources are needed. Do you still do that these days?
Yes.
So there's still some of those disciplines that are similar to the past. What can Switzerland teach Canada? Whether at the government level, leadership, or is there any lessons that Switzerland has for us over here in Montreal?
I'd say that the biggest lesson that we can learn from Switzerland, not only towards Canada, but towards another type of organization, is to give more importance or to value more the lower level, let's say, job like mechanician or even somebody works in assembly. These jobs in Canada are not enough valued. We don't give the same value to somebody that goes to the university than somebody that does a lower level, let's say, a professional education. And here we have this system that is with, we call it apprentice. The apprenticeship is a system where the people can really develop themselves to all the level, to become somebody that works in even in the shop, a garden shop. There's a 3 years apprenticeship. 3 years apprenticeship to work in what we call in Quebec would be do-it-yourself or something. But that means that at every step we value the job and we value what they learn in that job, and there's a transfer of the knowledge. And this is I think we could learn a lot by having this type of education with apprenticeship, because this apprenticeship, the one that want to continue their education, then there's a way to go to the college level, what we call in Quebec the college or the cégep, and there's another way to go to the university. So if you are very talented, you can start with an apprentice and finish with a university degree. But when you finish your university degree, you are a lot more, let's say, you have a bigger image of what is the system than when you go to the university without having worked one day in your life in a factory or in an industry.
So in some ways, it's a more equal society, or people are respected. The carpenter is respected, the plumber, the people that do run your machines are valuable and valued, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think this is the big difference between Switzerland, and Switzerland is a lot like Germany. The system is more, there's a lot of commonality between the two. They look alike. There's this type of apprenticeship, and also the degree, the university degree is very strong, very demanding. The university degree is very, very much demanding. And there is some people that transfer from the university in Switzerland and went for, let's say, a year in other country, and there is a big difference of level.
When you look at Switzerland, like here in Canada, we have French and English, but you have French, German, and Italian.
Romanche.
Excusez-moi, madame, je suis très désolé. Is there some cultural differences between those groups, or are you Swiss? And it's a melting pot, like where a Swiss fondue, I guess, would be.
They are all Swiss, but there's some big difference. There's even difference between the Swiss German, all of them. The Swiss German from Valais is different from the Swiss German from Zurich, and it's different. So the big difference in it's the type of environment. If you are from the country compared to the mountain, the mountain compared to the, let's say, to the valley, that makes the big difference. But there's a cultural difference.
Many companies are looking, we're all looking for more innovation. Your firm is known for innovation. You have innovation cells. What are some of the things to help drive innovation in an organization you've learned over the years?
First, I think it's a mindset up. When I arrived here, we had this company was in a bad position, had done none to close to non-innovation in the few years before, because they went through a process that was different, and I said we have to innovate. So we made some like innovation workshop with almost everybody, saying now this place, it's important innovation from all the steps of the value chain. So we did some workshop, and then we give the resource to do the innovation, let's say, project that we decide. We decide together which project we will do, and then we set up target of innovation, at least one new innovation in each market per year, and also I gave some objective of IP, of a patent or new process every year. And that gives it's a mindset. Afterward, you don't need to continue to push the idea, it spreads over.
But it's part of the culture now, part of the reward system of how you do things. So it's taken it's just part of the culture now.
Yeah, we like it. We want to go further. We want to show what's new. We have every year we have some fair, and at the fair now we have some customers that they are so used to have a new patent or a new innovation every year. So they ask us in advance, so what will be your innovation this year?
What is an innovation cell? I read about it on your website. What's an innovation cell?
Well, the innovation cell innovation is difficult in an industry of our type if you don't give the resource, if you don't allow some cash, some money to be invested in people, in asset that will serve only for innovation. They don't have to give an output of, let's say, of a product every day, every hour, every minute. The innovation cell is a cell where we can try some ideas, we can develop some process, we can try and maybe don't have a result positive every time, because that's the innovation cell.
Disruption is a big thing, and I have CEOs come. We have a CEO class. We have 2 CEOs or 3 every Wednesday night. So about 35 show up. One question I ask them is, who's the Uber of your industry? Is disruption occurring in your industry, or is it just tough to do in your particular industry?
Well, I start with the medical, which is one of our big part of our turnover. Medical field, it is true, it's very important, disruptive, but at the same time, it's quite difficult not to do incremental research and innovation, because the validation of each process has become harder and harder. So
You're breaking up for me anyway.
Yeah, the disruptive, let's say, now
Vincent,
we will
can you hear?
I can hear.
Oh no,
You're not hearing?
No, it was breaking up for me. I don't know, Vincent, was it breaking up for you or Anne? Or could you hear her fine?
Could you go back, Nicola, maybe your last sentence? I think we all got cut for some reason.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was talking about innovation.
Yep. And yes. And looking at disruption, and you were talking about the the medical
in the medical
instruments industry?
field, disruptive. It is possible, but it's very delicate. You can bring on the market an instrument that is really disruptive, that is completely like we did. We have an instrument that is made of carbon instead of steel, so that was really completely different. But it takes a lot of time to go on the market because there is the difficulty of the validation and the surgeon and the habit of working with an instrument. So, for instance, our big project now is the manufacturing for Carmat for the artificial heart. This is disruptive. I mean, it's a change from transplant to an artificial heart. But this heart was developed by our customer Carmat since 2008, and now it's coming on the market since 1 year. So see the time lag for the market, but it's still a disruptive, and it's a full disruptive also in the process, in the organization, in the validation process. So, but it's very exciting. I mean, when you have a team working on an artificial heart where each process is so strict, and at the end, we are proposing to our customer the center of the heart, the motor pump group, and this will go into the first bioprotectic heart that exists.
So it's quite the early adapters you need for men and women that have the courage to be very much pioneers. How do you find those people?
So I would say we work currently like a very traditional. We have from our contact at the university. So we have also some of our employees that also give some lecture at the university, and we have some people coming from some university, and we dig into the new reservoir every year of people going out of Polytechnic School, of Bern School, or there's in regulatory affair in France. There we have some people come from there, where each of them have let's say some specialty.
We have a master's in data analytics now, and I sit on the board of a small AI company. Is AI and big data something that you're seeing a lot more of in your industry and in Switzerland in general?
It's a big topic. We've been into a lot of workshops. I've sent the team to different workshops, and we build up some for each plant. We have a project for, let's say, how can we use the big data for either our internal process or for the product themselves. So how can I use the data from each the machine to do a preventive maintenance, to work into a closed loop? This is really the big thing now, a closed loop process where you don't need anymore to make setup. You have the setup that is done itself by auto-correcting of the machines. So we have a team working on that.
COVID-19, what was the impact in Switzerland and on your firm? Did you have to shut down the firm for a while? Or tell us a bit about COVID-19 in Switzerland and the impact on the economy in your firm.
So, like everybody in March last year, it was the big blast. We had to cancel our ski weekend. So, but let's say on 1 week, all the watch customer closed. It started by Rolex on the 18th of March, and the same day, factory after the factory, they closed. So for 1 month, our watch sector was closed for a bit less than a month because we are such a lot of work. We continue to work even if we couldn't sell to the customer, ship to the customer. After a while, we closed for a bit more than 2 weeks, almost a month. We were closed in one factory, and the other factory were never closed. But we had to adapt because some people were missing because they had to find some solution for their children. Some they had to find because the school were closed. But nevertheless, we never closed the other factory, only one in Montreal for that month of April. And that brings us a lot of, let's say, advantage because since we were never closed, we continue to develop. We push the innovation process very further, where we could use let's say the fact that there was a less meeting. We didn't have the possibility to visit the customer. So we could develop more the internal development that were slowing down always due to some priorities. So we worked on priority and development. And in fact, we had never had the number of projects we had last year compared to the other year. And this year it continued. It's like it has put some seed into innovation. And now this seed is growing. And now we had the meeting today. We have to decide, do we continue to this new project? It's such interesting, but do we have resources? So we have to work the priorities.
Are many of your staff working from home?
So we did some, at one point, the government asked us to ask all the company to do as much as possible home office. My position was, when we did some home office, all the positive case of COVID we had in the factory never happened in the factory. They always happen. Those people, they caught the COVID when they was at home because the neighbor is coming, the children are coming at noon. And at MPS, nobody caught the COVID. So we said, okay, we had a program of a home office already, a pilot program that was set up before the COVID. So in one day, we went from like 10 home office to 120. So we were able to do that because we already had the setup of all the VPN and the access. And then we reduce, and now we have a normal 2 days maximum home office per week. And for me, I think we have some customer or partners where they have really intensive home office, but after a while, I have difficulty to believe that you can still be productive and be, let's say, committed when you have home office such intensive.
So you like being at the office?
Yes.
Why?
myself, because I'm people are. I mean, a lot is going around. Not only during normal meeting, team meeting, when you start at one time, but when you are in between two meetings, you see somebody, start to have a discussion, you call another one, and you say, hey, why not come and show me? And that's a lot of improvement is going through that. But it's not the only way. So there is some people like in accounting that can really do more of a home office.
You've worked for a big corporate IBM, you've worked in startups, you've worked in family-run firms. What is the advantage of family-run firms in your mind and their better moments?
I would say the family-owned firm have a goal of long-lasting, sustainable development. There's not a reporting on the monthly EBIT that is such important.
So a longer-term perspective then?
I would say yes. That's for sure. That's for sure.
So you sit on some corporate boards in Switzerland. Have you seen the role of the board evolve in the last 5 or 10 years? And what do you see as the role of the board members? What's their job? Is it to hire the CEOs, to approve the strategy? Is it to create the strategy? What's the role of the board members?
I would say the first role is a sounding board to the management. The management, they have every day the two hands in the hole, and they are working, and it's difficult to have a big image. Us, the board, we are there to look about that way. There's other thing going around. There is new trends. That's the first role. Of course, the role is also to accept the strategy, but the strategy, I would say it's not us to develop the strategy. It's not to the board to develop the strategy. We are not inside the business. We don't have the knowledge. It's really the management. And as CEO, I would say, I involve the board in the decision of the strategy there's a role, there's this sounding board. It's important to keep the flow, because if not, it's not possible to have accept a strategy where you're so too much far away from the day-to-day business. And the choice of the growth appetite, that's the role also of the board, to give what is the boundary.
Interesting. In boards in Canada have gotten smaller. They have more C-suite or former C-suite people. So it's not, in the old day, your golfing buddies that are just rubber stamped. So do you see that change in Switzerland where people like yourself are actually, and are there more women on boards? Is that kind of a trend in Switzerland as well?
It's a slow trend.
Okay.
The gender diversity, it's slowly but coming. The board member that are friends for golfing, that it doesn't exist. The board are very professional.
Okay.
And business oriented, output oriented, and something more oriented. I mean, I'm on the board of an insurance company. I'm vice president of a bank. I'm on the board of the Swiss Innovation Agency. So the people in the management of InnoSwiss, they know their business. Our role is different.
A big trend in North America is EDI, equity, diversity, inclusion around people of color, women, and so on. Is that an issue that is getting a lot of time and energy in Switzerland?
It is for national company. I used to be on the board of the Swiss Post. And when you talk about a national company like this with 46,000 employees at the time, there it is important not to have all the power from the guy from Zurich or the guys from Bern. So gender inclusion and also the diversity from the region, that's important. But when you get to the Swiss ecosystem is built up more from small company than big company. Big company like the US are, let's say, rare in Switzerland. And there it's the difficulties to the recruitment already of the specialists, of the people is already a big challenge if you want to include in their inclusion of let's say of colored people or gender. It's difficult, but it comes anyway, in fact, because when you need to recruit, you have to recruit from all over because the country is so small.
General Electric, one of the great conglomerates of our time, Nicola, broke up recently into 3 different companies. When we look at your firm, there's different divisions. Are there synergies, or what are the synergies between the different divisions? What holds them together?
Well, you're right. When we grew and we grew in our different division. Each one had his own, let's say, logo and even his own, let's say, maturity. And we were going at one point in different direction where we were not using the synergy that exists in between. And even at one point, synergy in other type of business means reduction of personnel. But here we put in place a plan where the synergy is the exchange of experience on different fields that can bring to the other a plus compared to, and now we have some synergy group on different specific topic, not a huge synergy event where, I mean, you spent a lot of time, everybody wants to go back home because nothing is not enough focus. Now we have synergy group focused on that type of machine, on laser machine, on cleaning, on procurement. And this worked very well because people now realize that they can have exchange and have a plus for them in that synergy group.
You've done a number of mergers and acquisitions. How do you bring successfully companies to be part of your company without losing the most impressive and best talent?
Well, it's not easy to make a merge because it's you're bringing people that did not decide to be together, and the danger is that they often have a competition in between, or they don't. So what we have done, the first company that we acquired was the Décolletage company. We invite them to the factory. We spend time together at the beginning before, so that they discuss with the same peer discussion to see, what is my difficulty, what's my challenge. And we did that each time. We did for MPS Prismed also. We did that also when we did acquire Serré. With each acquisition, we worked a lot at the beginning by bringing the people together and have them discuss together.
How do you do strategy at your firm? Does it come from you and you go away and think deep thoughts, maybe hire McKinsey? Or how is strategy developed? Is it a 5-year plan as well? Like how long, who does strategy and how long is it?
Well, for each of the, just a second, I will ask something. Tu peux m'allumer la lumière de ces trucs? Je sais pas si tu arrives à l'allumer. C'est sous la table. C'est sous la grande table là-bas. Yeah. So the strategy is developed through what we have put like for watch. We create a strategy. I would say strategy committee where we build up, we put together what we think the market wants, and we have on board of this committee professor from the university, somebody from the let's say the academic, and one from the market. It's difficult because you need somebody from the market that is not a competitor, that is not a customer. So when you have a good relation with a customer, we ask him to be on the strategic committee, and we showed them our strategy, but we also ask them, these external, to bring us their view of the development in the market. What is needed in the market? They have to answer these questions. And we do a workshop once a year. Just once a year is enough. And we review our strategy, and some decisions, some development we decide to descope or to postpone or to put more energy. And we did for the orthopedic industry, we have a strategic committee, and we bring aboard instrumentists, surgeon, and also implant manufacturer for one day. And each of them, we ask them to have the voice of the customer. What's the instrument you dream of? We have a question like this every year, and this gives us the input for the strategy. And so
it's customer led. You also have technology. So in some ways, technology allows us to do things that the customer and we didn't know about. But sometimes
that's why we have on board not only the customer, but we have on board professor from the university. So we had the professor that retired now we have a new one coming, and he comes with his student, and they are completely crazy idea, and we pick up some, and we drove. Now we have set up 3 Swiss projects, so innovation project with those academic. That is really far in advance. It's really like new material, new ways of working.
So we talk about technology and the market, and they talk about their needs, and together it comes up with new ideas and new approaches.
And when you say what would be the trend? What is the trend? The new the new trends in a big market like watch or instrument for surgery. When you discuss this, then you have some input coming from this new material developed for this type. Could we use the same thing? Could we transfer that to a non-magnetic material? There is an exchange. It's a melting pot, and then from that comes some idea, and we start to develop that. But we still have some guideline. We decide to develop our own platform product for the microsystem. So we have identified that the optic market, the laser market, and the astronomic observatory are the key market, and then we develop we go get some ideas in the seminar, in the university when there's some exchange, we go there and we bring that to the strategic committee.
I just finished a book on Generation Z and young millennials. In Switzerland, do you see young millennials and Zs as quite different than the Xers and the Boomers, and we've got to change how we do things to align with their values? Is that something that's of conversation in Switzerland?
Yeah. It's still a struggle. Let's say the Z, they want to work maybe not too much, maybe 80%, maybe 70%. They want to be able to do a lot of home office, and if there's too much wind, they want to go windsurf and being able to come to work when they want, what they want. So it's still a struggle to adapt ourselves to this generation. I'm not sure we should fully adapt ourselves.
I'm not sure a skydiver can make fun of windsurfers. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
okay.
You need some wind, but not too much.
Well, yeah, and skydiving, you don't want too much wind either, I guess. So there's some there. If you have a question, please put it in the chat room, and Vincent's going to keep an eye on it. So if you have any questions or things you'd like to discuss, please let us know through the chat, or just raise your hand physically, and we'll have you ask the question on camera if you're so inclined. Where do you see the company going over the next 5 years? Is it going to be similar to what you're doing today, or is it going to change in the next 5 years? What's your, and we'll come back to in 5 years to find out, but what's your thought?
Yeah, there's a big change because we have increase into the value chain, and now we are touching, some very more complex product, like the artificial heart. For me, it's a huge development, and there is such a potential. And this, by working on the artificial heart, now we are working on a new aortic valve, which is a huge potential. And this brings us to other product into this heart domain where we were not at all. We were into the implant, but different type of implant. So the medical field is one of the really field where we have a lot of success and a lot of potential. It's not a one-to-one success. There's a lot of project we develop, and at the end it doesn't work for different reasons that we could not see at the beginning. And also what we have started now into the optic, developing system for the optic. I think we can really do a huge ramp up in the US. Now we have opened a new office in Boston this last month, and we really believe, because the customer tells us, or when we go to seminar or conference in the US, they are so surprised about what we can do, what we can offer, that it brings new capability, new project, new development. And now it's a question of saying, well, we cannot do all of the same at the same time.
It strikes me it's good being Swiss when you talk about things like your industry. Just the world goes, the Swiss are just good at this, along with maybe the Germans. Is there a very positive sense of Switzerland around the world in your travels?
Yeah, it is. It still is. It is because it's true. But we might say, the Japanese are very good. They are good in development, but to make connection with the people is more difficult.
And you have a question to ask.
Yes. Do you want me to ask it then? Nicola, we know that the Swiss and the Canadian governments have a very different approach to industrial policy, where I think the Canadian government is much more intervening. In Switzerland, the federal government refrains from defining target sectors, doesn't give you much financial support or subsidies, etc. What do you think of this? Do you see this as a positive, or would you like it to be different?
I understand the background. I understand that it's not by feeding through neither the industry that you can bring them to a major development sustainable. But the industry is facing as competition around the world, even if like we said, we have some unique position, but we still have some people pushing from France, from Germany, from Italy, from US. And if the framework conditions are not the same, so I'm always pushing, and I'm the ambassador of having the same framework condition. So if you have, let's say, a support for the development, the R&D, which is now more and more the framework condition you have in Canada or in the US or in Germany and Belgium, we must have the same possibility, because if we don't, we will face competition that has access to more resource for the very, let's say, high-tech development. So we need the same framework condition. And I would say on top of that, direct financing for, I would say, is not something that is positive for the industry, because I say it's not, doesn't bring the company to be itself self-sustainable. But for a startup, you sometimes need some direct push. So I would say in the future, what we could do better would be to have a venture fund that is government fund.
So, Nicola, you're Canadian. How do we get you back home? How do we get you to move to Montreal? Or can we? Or is that out of hope?
It's already quite difficult with this COVID. But you know what? I'm every winter, every Christmas, I go to Quebec and I meet with my friends from the university. We have a group of friends. One is a CEO of Canadian Pacific. The other one has created a startup that has 2,000 employees in Quebec City that is on the NASDAQ. So we have such a fun together to discuss our different topics.
So, Maurice, you have a question? Would you like to ask?
Yes, well, more a comment. First, thank you so much, Nicola. It's very good to hear, after all these years, that you are still strong and ahead. I want to thank you for one thing. You made me understand maybe the reason why Swiss are fundamental better. And I'm not just excited about it. I think there is a fundamental reason. We are so small that we have to count on us, and meaning we are politically organized, that we are asked regularly to answer questions of the nation. This is a rare privilege, and we have to develop knowledge and make research in fields of all kinds. And so our approach to life is to be responsible at the university, at school, at your firm. The boundaries are much further up than usually. I make a comparison with the French. The French, they are used to that decisions are made from above, and they are used to follow and to be restricted into their specialties. We are not so, and I think it's a huge privilege. Thank you.
Merci, Maurice. I think it's our philosophy, and I say to all the personnel, every meeting that I do with all the personnel, I want every decision that can be taken to a lower level, taken to the lowest level it can be taken. And that's the way Swiss is organized. What can be done at the commune or the city level is done at the city level. What has to go to the canton level, it's taken, the decision is taken at the canton level. We live it now with the COVID, and only few decisions are taken at the government level. and at the federal level. And it's true that if you look at the budget of the federal, it's only for defense, but education is canton-wise, immigration is canton-wise, so everything is taken at the lowest level. In Switzerland, let's say the level of the commune or the city has a lot more responsibility than in Quebec. We have the roads and the school. The professor at the elementary school are paid by the commune, not by the level of the canton or even at the level of the federal.
Nicola, I had a quick question for you. Thanks for your remarks. It kind of goes along the way of the management culture, but you pointed out earlier that you may have maybe a different opinion that, let's say, I mean, that what's being said here in Canada regarding Gen Z and like basically younger staff or younger generation of staff, and that you basically think that there's a limit to the point where you should accommodate to let's say the needs and requirements of the new generation staff. What's your can I dig a little deeper there and ask you basically what either you think that companies can or can do, and especially these days, I mean, the current goal is working capital, like humans. So
Yes, okay.
I want
but the some of the Z generation think, or the philosophy is that the company, they are there to serve themselves. And if we go too much that way, well, there will be the Chinese that will be very smiling because we will be, falling apart. I think the enterprise exists and the employees are there to serve the enterprise, and we do it the best way to have the best condition so that we can cope. But it's in the other way. If we don't have as first priority the sustainability of the company, we will fade away.
Nicola, it's almost 1 o'clock here in Montreal. We need to let you get to dinner. Hope you enjoy a nice Swiss fondue or something. It's been too long. It's been about 2 years since I've been to Switzerland. So thanks for your time. Very interesting conversation. I'll turn it back to Vincent to finish off.
Good. I hope the remaining of the turkey is still good.
Did you call Vincent a turkey? Anyway,
no. She was referring to maybe Thanksgiving or something like this. But
I hope so.
No, thanks very much, Nicola, for your time. It's much appreciated. Thanks to you, Karl, as well for this interview and the great questions that came about here. I want to thank every participants today that made the time to participate and maybe learn something new or enjoy the discussion anyway. So we're hoping to mobilize this same team and maybe continue the CEO series down this year, maybe with a couple more iterations. So stay tuned.
So if I can send an open invitation, if somebody wants to visit MPS, you just send me an email.
Great. Well, we'll share the contacts when those requests come through. Thanks, Nicola.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody.